Before we get started, there is a small piece of housekeeping. Any questions can be asked at any time, and we will answer towards the end of each topic segment. Today we're going to talk about Lingware Suite, the background to its development, and provide examples of how easy and flexible the technology is to use by providing 3 demos of real-world examples and how you can use them to deliver value for your companies. However, first I'd like to say good morning, and it's an honor to be talking to you today. And at this time, I'd like to introduce your host today, Joe, and myself, Brian.
Hi, I'm Joseph Novak. I'm one of the co-founders and the chief solutions architect at Spitch. My background is in speech recognition research, and I've been working in this area for about 10 years.
Hi, my name's Brian Martin, and I have a 35-year-old career focusing on the banking industry before moving onto and into creation and supply of technology for the financial services industry. And I'm responsible for all aspects of UK operations. So Spitch is an established company.
It looks like we have quality issues.
So let me try and get a bit closer to the microphone.
Okay.
Okay, so hopefully the audio quality is now a little bit better. Spitch is an established company staffed by professionals in Zurich. Okay, it seems that we have
some audio quality issues.
Audio quality issues, yeah. I'm not sure how we're going to fix that.
Maybe you can drive here for a second, Brian. I'll see if there's not something simple we can do to improve that a bit. Okay. Have we got anything a little bit better at the moment? Yeah.
Okay. So I don't think that we're going to be able to drastically improve the quality of the sound with the technology that we have in front of us at the moment. We've tried to optimize everything that we can. However, we will need to move on through this part of the seminar and try, and what we will do is make sure all the slides are available towards the end of the meeting.
And focus on the visual aspect.
Yeah, exactly. So I think what we'll do then is try to move through the initial slides just as fast as we possibly can and get to the actual product demonstration, which I think will be able to add the most amount of value here. So as you can see, Spitch is based in Switzerland, and we have a vision to be the leading voice technology business and enable our clients to automatically identify and understand and service their clients via the voice channel. As part of that vision, Spitch started developing Lingware as a way to easily build demos and demonstrate the platform's ease of use. As the functionality developed, it became increasingly obvious that the functionality that we'd initially created for our own use would add value to our partners and their clients. Spitch are able to deliver solutions now in UK English, American English, German, Swiss, uniquely Swiss Deutsch, French, Italian, and Russian. Okay.
Maybe if we slow down slightly, we'll get a.
Okay.
And unfortunately, there's not. Unfortunately, the connection is something we can't affect at the moment.
Okay. So, okay, I think I'm just going to have to keep going. As you can see, as a technology, voice has started growing exponentially over the past few years. And to many people's eyes, this is being driven by adopters seeing and hearing the benefits of consumer items such as Alexa, Siri, Amazon's Echo. The consumer is now well aware of the benefits in terms of ease of use and convenience being delivered by the voice channel. Those products undoubtedly add value in the consumer and retail space. However, Spitch believes it's at the enterprise level, voice will deliver the largest benefits based around improvements in customer experience and the potential for resource savings. There are many areas where we are already delivering benefits. Across banking, we are seeing adoption for identification, verification, and process improvement together with compliance monitoring. In the retail space, there is a growing trend to use voice-driven catalogue browsing, whilst in insurance, we are delivering projects to automatically capture first notification of loss and subsequent accident details via voice to improve accuracy and reduce resource requirements. And elsewhere, we are seeing a growing trend in apps using voice interfaces to improve ease of use. And while we're talking about ease of use, let's move over to our first poll and deliver our first poll question. Please feel free to answer questions above. The question is, what experience do you have with natural language processing and voice technologies in general? So just to let you know that this, all the polls that we're running today are totally anonymous and we don't see who's voting.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to end the voting now, and we can now see that we're at about 70% of people responded, and we can now share those results. So we can see generally that there's some positive experience and we'd like to develop and are interested more to learn about our solutions. Well, that's a really good place to be. So let's start to explore in a little bit more depth Lingware Suite and to see what it does. The Spitch Lingware Suite is the only platform that supports the full cycle of development and the implementation of voice technologies. It ensures the entire spectrum of speech technologies can be effectively mobilized by your own teams to address the individual business needs of your clients quickly, easily, and efficiently. So what's made up in the Lingware Suite? We have voice and data text collection.
So this is where we're trying to amalgamate the base resources that we then use in order to create something that we can use to train a speech recognizer or a semantic analysis machine or a voice biometric solution. This is the starting point for everything.
We have data annotation and transcription.
And this is the phase of the process where we take those raw resources that we collect and we transcribe or annotate them so that they'll be in a format that's suitable for feeding into our machine learning systems in order to train those models that we spoke about.
We also have the SLT application builder.
And this spoken language technology application builder, which is what we'll look at a bit later today, is the point in the process where we take those semi-finished resources, so trained models, components, acoustic models, semantic models, language models, vocabulary, and we put them together into a single application that serves at least the beginning of a particular business purpose.
We also have the semantic modeling section.
So this is the first of the dedicated applications. The semantic modeling component, something that we use to perform understanding of usually the output of the speech to text. So we take that and we try to figure out what, not just what was said, but what was meant.
We also have the voice biometric backend.
The voice biometrics are focused on verification and identification in our offering, and this is used pretty much for what you might think, for verifying that someone is who they say they are, and for identifying an individual from within a group of registered voice prints.
We also have the ASR automatic speech recognition backend.
And this is the component that kind of links everything together, performs most of the heavy lifting, and it's the component that, when used in speech-to-text mode, is going to be outputting the input to the semantic model.
So one of the things that you will need to potentially do is to collect data, and one of the versions that we can supply is the crowdsourcing, which that integration really makes a difference.
Right, so we provide our Lingware Suite and our annotation and collection components as components that can be deployed on site for a customer. If there's a security requirement or other reasons they prefer their data not to go off-site at any point in time, something that's becoming increasingly relevant today. But we also provide the option of deploying this in combination or integrated with some of the more familiar crowdsourcing applications, so that you can do the same thing if you don't have those kind of stricter security requirements. You can do that same thing in the cloud, and you can distribute that work a little bit more easily and cheaply. So we try to provide a balance and let you choose whatever works best for you.
Yeah, and elsewhere we can undertake that on-premise if security is an issue with your business or your client businesses. So let's have a look at some of the technologies that are sitting behind the Spitch Lingware Suite. So we have the large vocabulary continuous speech to text.
So this is actually two components. So the large vocabulary component is something where we're looking at recognizing or transcribing more or less unconstrained or unrestricted speech into a best guess about the textual representation. And then we also support closed grammars in the form of a simple grammar. Again, we'll show each of these a little bit later in the presentation. And the GRXML standard, which is probably familiar to at least some of the listeners out there. So that we can build both very simple lists very quickly, or in the case where we need to support something more complex, we can do that in accordance with rules or requirements as stated by the business case.
We also have the statistical semantic model.
So again, as kind of mentioned in the previous slide, this is what we use to try to interpret what was said. So not just after we figured out what was said, then we want to know kind of what it means. And this is what we use for applications like SkillBased Routing, for instance.
We also have cascade sentiment analysis.
And this is kind of like the next step in the semantic analysis chain, I guess you could say, where we're looking now not just at the interpretation or the meaning of a particular phrase or a particular utterance, but the progression of sentiment or the positive, negative view of a particular conversation, turn by turn and throughout its course.
And we also have the biometric side.
Right, and here again, we're talking about voice verification and identification.
So in terms of speed to market, basically we see the key challenge here is to balance accuracy and time to market. In a recent piece that we developed for a client, was in app, when you're able to go from initial meeting to deploy solution via 3 steps in 9 weeks. So moving on from a recent success story, I think it's time to take a look at our second poll. So the question is, which implementation scenario best suits your client's needs?
We have tried to make a couple of minor alterations to the network configuration. I hope that maybe there's a slight improvement in the voice quality that you're getting.
Okay, so I think we're going to end the voting there. Thanks very much. And you should be able to see the results there. Basically, the results, the majority want to use a set of that ensure fast time to market, customization, and high accuracy. So I think you've probably heard enough of me talking, and now it's time to hand over to Joe, who will run you through some demonstrations.
Okay, I'll take the reins here and try and switch us back. So I'm going to share my screen in a second here. I'm going to let Brian, I think, still introduce our first little mini case study.
Yeah, so our first mini case study will be a voice-driven corporate directory to permit inbound calls to be directed to the appropriate person or department using a voice interface. Enterprise clients are receiving an increasing number of inbound calls, even with the advent of email and chatbots. There is no sign of a reduction in calls. Callers expect to be put through to the right person at first touch, with the minimum to no time spent on hold. The way that inbound calls are managed can often be the first interface between an enterprise and a prospective customer. It is imperative that calls are handled professionally and accurately whilst incurring the minimum of resource requirements.
Okay, now I'm going to share my screen real quick here with the first view of our suite. And I hope the connection will be sufficient that we can actually see this clearly. I'll try and go slow so that we can. So here we have kind of the basic view of your applications and what's available. On the nav page, we have our home, we have the applications list, what we're looking at here, and this represents just the set of applications that you've built up to now that may or may not be connected to, say, IVR or SSM. Then we have the ability to build new simple grammar apps, new large vocabulary and optional SSM applications, and then together with that, the resource list. I'm not going to show, I think, uploading these resources at the moment, but these are an integral component of both the SSM and the large vocabulary system. So going back to the pre-canned applications that we've created, I'm going to go to the directory, simple directory app that Brian was kind enough to introduce. And we see in the application wizard, first, some basics about the application. So we want to give it some kind of friendly name. We can attribute a short description to it. And we also want to provide an ability to share these applications across an existing organization, or possibly for certain apps like digit recognition or names, addresses, to supply public applications that can kind of be used or shared by anyone for a particular language. Here, we're going to focus on English. We have a few other things that are actually in our suite. But what you would use would depend on what you need for your business. So then moving on, we have this grammar editor, and this actually defines what we're trying to recognize. And in the simple gram case, as you can see, as you can see in the simple gram case, it's quite simple what we're doing. We provide a list of names that we want to recognize, and then optionally separate them with a hashtag from what we want to provide back after compiling the application. So what I'm going to do here now is add one more name to the list. So we can add something like Michael, and we'll give him some kind of we'll capitalize his name in the output. And then the only thing that we have to do in order to get the application up and running is press the compilation button. And I see that unfortunately this is okay. So I'm going to press that. And it will take a few seconds to compile the application. You should see and as soon as it's compiled, we can call it. So we can say something like Joseph Novak or Michael, or we can try something that's not in our current vocabulary. So I don't know, Brian, you have a name you'd like to try?
Fred Blogs.
Fred
Blogs.
Fred Blogs. Fred Blogs. Okay, so this was recognized as the unknown word. So we can go back and we can try and add that real quick for Brian. I'm not actually sure how we're supposed to spell that, but we'll give it a try. Something like that. We'll go down. We will press the compile button one more time. Fred Blogs. Now we can see that Fred Blogs has been added to our Active Directory. So that's going to wrap up our first demo case, where we show kind of these simple grammars, what you can do with them. It's not going to cover every use case, but there are a lot of use cases like this Active Directory or anything else where you want to organize a list of names that's fairly simple in terms of its structure. Where you don't need to do anything more complicated. Okay, now I'm going to pass back to Brian and we'll move on to this next.
So we're now going to move on to demo case 2. Many companies have inbound call centers where the conversation between customer and agents is used to initiate a process, for instance, an insurance claim. Also, typically 25% of the client-agent conversation is in the identification and verification process, where the agent manually captures details that are then input for further analysis or process. The Spitch solution is able to recognize a client, understand their requirements, and commence a process. In this case, the automation of an insurance claim.
Okay, and with that, we'll share one more time our screen here. See if we can share everything this time, so you can see the compile button where the action takes place as well. Okay, so there we go. And now if we go back to our applications here, we're going to look at our alphanumeric sequentation. And here we see the application basics and the structure are exactly the same as our simple gram list. We have a different friendly name for our app and a different short description. We're using the same language here, but we can also see that the structure of the definition of the application itself is a little bit different. It's a little bit more complicated. And the reason being here is that if we want to process an insurance claim number, we don't want to have, we could, in theory, list out every possible insurance according to some scheme, but we like to instead simplify that by using a little bit more complex set of rules. And that's what the GRXML standard supports. So we have an implementation of this as well that's embedded in our suite. You can use it interchangeably with this simplegram. And here we have a very simple claim structure, which supports alphanumeric sequences, and our application logic tells us that we need to have two elements from ABC and 3 elements from the digits 0 through 9. We can compile this application the same way as the last one. And again, we can bring it up and test it right away. So A, B, 7, 8, 9. And we get the result back right away. And we can go back and we can modify it a little bit. So we can say maybe 2 through 4 occurrences, and we can add item D. Okay, and we can recompile that. And now we can try it one more time, test our modifications. A, B, C, 7, 7, 7. That concludes our second mini demo. So I'm going to hand back to Brian one more time.
Okay. Okay, we're going to move on to our third demo, and the third demo will contain elements of skill-based routing, and also show the large vocabulary pieces along with the SSM.
Okay, so for this, for this one, we're going to go back one more time to the screen sharing application. And most complicated demo. Let's hope everything goes according to plan. So we'll go back to our applications list. And then we'll go to our call center example. So we'll go back to our call center applications. And as you can see, the wizard for the large vocabulary application is just a little bit different. So we're first going to compile it again without the SSM text, but just utilizing the LVCSR corpus. So this is a small corpus of sentences that you could compile yourself or retrieve from someone else or ask us to build with you. And we use that to train a statistical language model that we then build again on the fly in exactly the same way. Before I show you real quick how that works as well. So in order to build the CSR application, what we want to do is first upload some kind of relevant resource for that. You know, we've already uploaded it. We have a text corpus, which just has line by line the sentences that we want to use to train our example models. And then we have a description of what it's intended for, the sharing level again, the language it's associated with, and then some of the associated file IDs that can be used later to download, retrieve, or alter those resources. Okay, so I'll take us back then to this particular call center application. And we will retrain it without the SSM. It's pretty small, so it goes pretty quick. But this is one place where, unlike the simplegram or the grXML applications, if you have a really large text corpus, it will take maybe a few minutes or up to 20 or 30 minutes. We have something simple with a couple of hundred lines of text, so it goes quite quickly. And now this is targeting our skill-based routing. So I'm going to talk about something related to the corpus. I need to block my SIM card. Okay, so nothing too exciting there. It's just a pretty simple LVCSR application. Then what we can do with that is we can take an SSM corpus, which looks something like this. It's more or less just a list of utterances with the targeted skills or categories that we want to train, which we feed in as a resource. And then after that, we select it here under the optional application SSM text resource. And again, we can recompile the application. And now we've both retrained the LBCSR model and trained an SSM model to combine with it. So now we can say something like what we just did. Block my sim. And here we can see the speech recognition actually was not perfect this time, but the SSM was still able to figure out what was intended. So we want to find the app block category and then route the user accurately to that particular that agent with that particular skill. The other thing that's interesting here is that we can deploy this right away with an existing IVR application, and I'm going to give that one try here as well. We'll see how it goes, what with our existing connection, but we should be here.
So, how may I help you?
I need to speak to an operator.
Connecting you to an operator now. Please stay on the line.
Okay, so you can see that in this case, actually the SSM and LBCSR application that we just compiled and deployed was launched inside of our tiny skill-based routing IVR and was able to respond on the basis of not just the raw text that was recognized, but the interpretation of what it meant, so that we can then route that call directly to the appropriate person. And that concludes our third mini-mo. And I will hand the screen and slides back to Brian.
Thanks, Joe. And I think it's now time for our last survey or poll. So I'm just going to bring that one up now. And let's have a look at question 3. And it's, how would you like to proceed with the integration of speech technologies? Okay, so thanks very much for voting, everybody. Let's take a look at those results. So it looks like the majority of people, 50%, would like to be as a solution provider and would like to integrate a speech voice interface to improve their solutions. So that's a pretty good response there. So I think as we end this third and final poll, now will be a good time to accept any questions from our colleagues and people still online.
Yes. So the, sorry.
Okay.
I think I see a couple of questions in there. I'm gonna, yeah. So yes, test driving, the first kind of question here is when will it be possible to test drive Lingware by ourselves? And this is something that we're already providing as a beta option to some of our existing partners. It's
That's
something
correct.
that you just need to get in contact with
Spitch. You can
Brian.
contact myself, Brian Martin. So I'm brian.martin@spitch.ch, and I'd be happy to pick up with that for you. Okay, are there any other questions or comments out there?
We apologize again about the audio quality, which seems to have had a bit of a stall on things. Hopefully we got a little bit better there towards the end.
So I think all of the questions have been asked, and it just falls to myself and Joe to thank you very much for attending today. If you do have any questions, please. A final question, great.
Okay. That comes from Vadim. So he's asking, how much data do we need to train our SSN for IVR of, say, 30 topics? And this, it's really going to vary a bit depending on, well, both the number of topics he specifies and also the variability and the complexity of the language that divides them. So if you have 30 topics that are really well separated, we typically recommend that you have between 5 and 20,000 examples that we can use to train the system, as is typical of pretty much any large vocabulary, typical modeling system. You want to have more data the better. You want to have as much as possible. But something to get started, you can usually get started quite quickly. And if you want to start with a smaller number of categories, you can also do that. Something like what we did today, where you can get quite good results with a very small corpus. It really depends on what the business case is and what you really need to do to drive it forward.
Okay, so thank you very much for that question. If there's nothing else, we'd like to thank you all for attending. Please do reach out to us with your comments and feedback. We'd really appreciate that. And from Joe and myself, thank you for attending. We hope you enjoyed the seminar. Have a good day.